Ladies and gentlemen, Beth Paretta, the one and only.
Wow. Hello, everybody. That is such a lovely introduction, Paul. I appreciate it. And I also am thankful that you gave our team a mention in your morning remarks as well.
Well, thank you. I will say that again was one of the most profound moments in my 50 years of walking into the garage and seeing all these women preparing to race in the Indianapolis 500. I was awestruck, and I want to see more of it. So thank you.
I know, yeah, you and me both. And I think obviously why was probably a little bit more profound, Paul, is you were one of the first people I told the idea to how many years ago. So you saw the kind of the peaks and valleys and the closed doors that I just kept relentlessly knocking on. So it was kind of nice to see it finally come together after much struggle, but obviously we wouldn't have been there without the help of many other people, you being one of them, obviously Roger Penske being one of them. So I'm certainly grateful that we could do it, and hopefully here's to more, which is why I've invited these ladies to speak with us today, because this is a very different perspective. And so we're going to talk about women in motorsport, but we're going to talk about why it's also, a little bit about their individual journeys, but why it's good business. Why does this matter? And I know that some people might be a little bit tired about just kind of hearing this over and over again, but we're going to talk about why it actually matters to your bottom line and what you can do in your business to kind of help the cause, and how it can maybe grow your audience too. So a little bit of an unusual panel, not just your typical racing driver or racing engineer. We've got we do have an engineer with us, but we have kind of the business backbone, program managers, attorneys, racetrack operators with us today. And so hopefully that's a different angle that people haven't heard yet.
Thank you, Beth. So we are going to let you take control for the next 50 minutes.
All right. Thanks so much. Hello, ladies. Oh, wait, you can, I think you can unmute yourself. There we are. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hello. So with us today, we have Julie Giese, Lori Everhart, and Alba Colon. How are you? How was your Thanksgiving?
It was fantastic. How was yours?
It was good. I mean, it's the off season, but I always laugh at that because especially for people in our roles, there's no such thing as an off season. So it's kind of adorable because we're all just gunning to get things ready, I'm sure, with whether the clients that you have or track preparation. Julie, you have an exciting thing coming up this next season we'll talk about too. So I'm sure that there's no rest for the weary. So for the audience at home, let's just kind of go around the room and tell a little bit about what your job is now, and kind of maybe a little bit of previous jobs that you held that kind of got you to where you are, a little bit of background. And then I'm just going to ask you some specific questions kind of about how what we do relates to the industry. So Julie, let's start with you. Where did you grow up and how did you find yourself running Phoenix, and tell what you do now?
All right. Well, hello, and thanks for the opportunity to be here. I grew up in central Wisconsin, actually on a dairy farm. I'm a farm girl at heart, and family is still on that dairy farm in Colby, Wisconsin. I grew up a race fan, and I loved watching racing, and in college decided that was what I wanted to do. Didn't really know exactly what that meant or how to do it, but got the opportunity to start at Watkins Glen International in 2001, entry-level PR job, and really was just able to kind of find my way through the industry, learned a lot. I had a lot of great mentors and advocates, and for the past 4 years, I have spent running Phoenix Raceway as its president, and am now actually currently transitioning to a new role, to the new Chicago Street Race, and going to help bring that first of its kind event to life. So right now I'm bouncing between Phoenix and Chicago.
That is amazing. I can only imagine any street race, for people that have attended street races, it's we all know that it's kind of bringing the circus to town, but there's so many added things that we take for granted, like dealing with the municipalities, the police, all the things that you kind of can somewhat overlook when you are just at a purpose-built track, which is, feels like, all the amenities are there. Now you've got to bring all the amenities in. So I can't even imagine. So you're not from a racing family though.
I'm not. I'm from, again, I come from agriculture, family farm, but I would say a racing family from a fan perspective. My dad is a big race fan, so grew up watching racing with him. So even though we weren't involved, I went to a lot of races, well, some short tracks and things growing up, and just grew to love it.
Absolutely. Lori, how about you? So I know a little bit, I'd love for you to share with everybody sort of your path, and also a influential woman in your life who also worked in racing for a long time.
Yeah. So thank you, Beth, and thank you for everybody having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to discuss. It's a really important topic about diversity and inclusion. But yeah, my interest started, my dad took me to the racetrack when I was little, like Julie. My dad was a race fan. And I grew up in Michigan, mid-Michigan, right outside of Michigan International Speedway. And when Roger Penske owned the track in the early 70s and the 80s, my mom was his controller there at the Speedway. So I started in racing, was my summertime job in high school. I was assistant to the public relations director, who at the time was a guy named Chris Browning, that was the PR director at Michigan, and worked there every summer during high school and in college. And then you remember Roger opened up Nazareth Speedway with Mario Andretti and Jim Williams, which was, I was in school in Allentown, Pennsylvania, when I was in college. So I said, hey, can I come work with you when you're opening up Nazareth and run your media credentials and help in your PR department? So I did that while I was in school. I was, when I graduated from undergraduate, and I am a kind of an odd duck in motorsports. I'm not technical. I'm a history major and a political science major with a theater background. And I went to law school. But I had some mentors in the industry that led me to pursue the law path. So I ended up going to law school, came to Wake Forest University, which is down here. I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina now. So Charlotte, with a lot of NASCAR business, ended up getting my first job out of law school as in the events department at Charlotte Motor Speedway, working for Humpy Wheeler at the time. And then had a 15-year career with Charlotte Motor Speedway, Speedway Motorsports, and doing the jobs as they became along, and was the general counsel of Charlotte Motor Speedway, it was promoted to the vice president of communications and general counsel of Speedway Motorsports when it went public on the New York Stock Exchange, and did all the financial transactions, the mergers and acquisitions, financial transactions. And then the last 3 years at Speedway Motorsports moved into an operational role, which Julie, I think what you're doing is absolutely fabulous. Since high school, I wanted to be general manager of a super speedway. I took the law route, and that's what I'm doing now. But I think running a speedway is one of the best, most fun jobs that I've ever had. So did that for 3 years, and then moved back into my legal role, and now advise a lot of speedways across the country, race teams, racing drivers, and a lot of companies that are involved in motorsports. So I just did the next job that came along that had something interesting that I wanted to do, and had a pretty very diverse career, which I'm super happy about it, to be in the position where I am.
It's fascinating how our lives sort of follow different paths. So we probably wouldn't have necessarily plotted out for ourselves, right? Sometimes it's just kind of being open to opportunity as it happens. Alba, how about you? Tell everybody where you are from, and what you studied, and maybe what your original plan was and where you are now.
Absolutely, Beth. Thank you for the invitation. It's great to be here today in this panel, of course, with Lori and Julie. That's a huge honor with the three of you. No, I was born in Spain. I grew up in Puerto Rico. I consider Puerto Rico my home. That's where my whole family is. And believe me, racing was never in the picture at all. I decided to become a mechanical engineer because I wanted to be the first female Puerto Rican astronaut. And that was the only reason why I decided to be an engineer. Things changed in life, and I got an opportunity to work on a student project that is called Formula SAE, where you design, build, and race a small race car. The competition is still going on in the Michigan International Speedway every year. But I started to work on that project, and 4 years later, General Motors was looking for talent at the competition, and they decided to hire me. So never applied for NASA. As you can see, things completely changed. still very fascinated with what's going on in the space. But this has been a journey that I never thought about it. And I have been in racing for more than 20 years. First, General Motors, where I did several positions until my last position. I was as a program manager for the NASCAR Cup Series. And from there, I had the honor that Hendrick Motorsports called me for a position here that pretty much is going to be now 5 years in a couple of months. And I never thought, where I was going to be and where I am today. In my position, we do many, many things, but one of the cool stuff that I love to talk about, and I think that is very fascinating, the way that the world is changing and how the rosters are more locked in the NASCAR Cup Series. There are less people from the race teams that get to go to the track, and most of the engineers stay behind. And we work at the command center, or what we call the team operations center. And with technology, we help our teams to provide them data, communication, and all the information that they need from our race shop. So during the weekends, while many of the guys are at the track, the rest of us are here and is pretty much doing the same job, but here from the shop. So
it's kind of like how F1 does it. People don't realize that there's, how many people are still back, whether in England or Italy, and they're actually not traveling. And well, at least in NASCAR, it's all North American time zones. It's pretty easy. Certainly when you have an international calendar, you'd be sitting there in front of your laptop at 2 o'clock in the morning because the race is going on. But that's also nice for the sake of those that their family situation might not allow for a lot of travel. This is a great thing to talk about, that now there are more jobs that might be a little family friendly because you're at least not on a plane every week. Because we all know that's one of the tough things about racing in general, is you're kind of never home and you're always working on weekends. I don't think any of us have probably ever had a 4th of July at home or a Memorial Day weekend at home, because we're always at the track. So what I love about all of these varied backgrounds is, other than, I know that, Alba, you studied engineering because you had a specific plan, but then that changed and you kind of pivoted. And also, we all know so many people that have found their way to racing because of Formula SAE. So certainly can't celebrate that enough, what that has done to just introduce people to racing. But Julie, what did you study in school? Communications?
Agriculture.
Right. My degree is in broadcasting and film. But what I laugh about is that, we obviously at our core, like anyone in racing, you have to love it, right? You're a fan of it, and you kind of come to it in different ways. Whenever we were introduced to it, something about it clicked for us and made us sort of want to then pursue whatever that path would be. But the reason why I wanted us to talk today is because we always talk about, the drivers are very visible, of course, and all of the efforts that have happened over the past 30 years to get more women behind the wheel. I think those are all important and need to continue, and we can definitely do more of that. But I think when we start talking about the reason why I started my team, the reason why we now have put together Women in Motorsport North America, which all of you are a part of, and we just had our Women with Drive Summit in Charlotte. The next one's going to be in Phoenix, November 7th and 8th, and we'll talk more about that in a bit. But the reason why we want to kind of lift the veil is that there's so much opportunity here, and we're certainly stronger together. But I think that it's really an interesting point to note that as a fan, there's so many ways that you can be part of this, because no matter what, you probably have to argue that everyone in it is a fan to start, right? You couldn't do this if you didn't love it, because you have to be committed to it. It's like, you'd hope that. I used to work for a car company where I remember being so disheartened when I learned that not everybody, I'm talking like a niche car company, it was Aston Martin. And I remember the day that I figured out that not everybody was a car person that worked there. And I thought, I understand if you're like in a mass market company and you're maybe in accounting, but like if you're working at Aston Martin and you're not a car person, why would you be there? And I think in racing, we're kind of, we luckily work with people that are all fans of it. And I think that's kind of where it starts. But it's interesting that we all have this circuitous path that kind of got us here. So I guess my question for you guys all, now that we kind of know that we all sort of found different ways and we're here, is why do you think it's good business? And like, have you, in your particular job and what you've done with the, we talk about, let's say, operating a track, for instance, Julie, in addition to the actual operations, you're also overseeing fan engagement, marketing within the community, and that. So Do you see that diversity is something that now is critical to sort of the growth of this sport, or is it just to kind of get us level set to where other sports may have been for the past couple of decades?
You know, I mean, I think we've continued to make good strides, but I think it's incredibly important because when you come to a race or attend an event, like we want everybody to feel at home and, you know, see people that look like them and that they can relate to. And I think for me, specifically, like in my conversations over the last month or two on Chicago and like talking about all the different ways to be involved in our sport, the surprise almost, like people, you talk about the drivers and they're our most visible asset, and it is an entry point, but there's so many different ways that you can get involved. Again, I grew up loving racing, didn't really think that it was something I would ever work in, honestly. Again, I grew up on a dairy farm. I was going to work in agriculture the rest of my life. And similar to Lori, it's like you start to, once you get into this industry, you start to learn about just the different opportunities and see paths that you never thought were possible. And I think that's what's so critical for getting anyone involved in the sport, is just opening up to the different avenues that you can be involved, whether it's being a promoter, whether it's being on, you know, in the accounting field, in the law field, in the engineering field, just so many different ways that you can participate. That's the thing I've enjoyed the most the last several months, especially talking in Chicago and helping everyone understand just the really infinite opportunities available to participate and be part of our sport. And if you're not a fan right now, like it's, you know, what interests you? What are things that are important to you? And I think that's what I've seen, just the initiatives that we've really specifically on the NASCAR side from the D&I perspective, that has raised interest here in the Phoenix market. And it's led to a lot of really positive things. Still a lot more work to do, absolutely, but I'm really excited about the path that we're on right now.
Certainly, it is the only. I mean, it's the only pro sport at this level. You know, this large a sport where we can have co-ed teams right now. We don't necessarily have to have a division of league, and that's, you know, that's unique. And I think something that as an industry we should be leaning into more. And again, whether it's the drivers, having women and men on the track, but again, when we see that the entire team comprises of all these other roles, but then when we just go further and they need more rings outside, then we know that you know, there are women really in a lot of places. And in fairness, that, you know, we have been there quietly all along. I think the visibility is what we always say is so key, and it's one of those things that women, as soon as you say visibility, women, we all nod our head, because we all probably haven't experienced like that in our own past where we can see it. But now we're more visible, and purposely more visible. I mean, most engineers, mechanics are used to being behind the scenes and not calling attention to themselves. And it's and same thing with a track operator or an attorney. Your names aren't the first, you know, lead in the story, but now we're trying to at least be a little bit more visible. It might be uncomfortable at first, but we're seeing why that matters. Alba, I just saw that wonderful post by the gentleman who met you at the Hall of Fame, and referencing about how he's a father of daughters, and how he, I believe he's also a professional engineer, Hispanic professional engineer, and seeing you gave him such joy that he could point for his daughters to kind of see a visible example. Do you have stories like that? I mean, we know that you didn't see other race engineers when you were a kid, but now I'm sure there's people that reach out to you. Do you have examples of that?
Yes, and Beth, it's a huge honor. It's a huge honor, and you know, you never think about it when people stop you at the track, and not even at the track, in other places, and they mention, you know, in a specific item that you did. You don't realize how much people are watching what you're doing. It's not only the drivers, but they are watching, and specifically us women, what we are doing. You know, and I remember, like an example, I did not meet another engineer when I grew up, but you know, I wanted to be, like I told you, I wanted to be an astronaut because Sally Wright was that person that I was admiring. But I always thought, wow, it would have been nice to see another female engineer in person and to ask all these questions that I had. And I feel an obligation right now. Not an obligation. I feel like it's a privilege. It's a privilege that now young girls can see other examples and they can ask questions. And that somebody stop you and ask you a question, hey, how can I get to your position? Or how can I get to something like that? It's a huge honor. And we have been blessed and to have these mediums to be able to talk about that. But let me tell you, I just was in a conference of Hispanics, the Society of Hispanic Engineers. There were more than 5,000 aspiring Hispanic young engineers that want to work on these kind of events. And there were other 1,000 professionals. And, to be stopped and that somebody said, oh, I have followed your career, and you don't even think about it, because for me, this is so normal, but it makes you think about it. It makes you think about how privileged you are. And that is our jobs, to help the next generation to get to where we are.
How do you feel about now that there are companies that we've worked with before, that companies that we know are visible in business, and they're making these pronouncements or efforts about increasing diversity? And I want to make sure, I mean, and this is I think this is a typical woman reaction. Would love your thoughts, Lori, when you see that there's always pushback. You want to make sure, everybody wants to make sure that it's the best candidate. Right? Of course, it's the best candidate, because you still need to be able to do the work. And I think that's one thing that is great about whether you're at the top of the business chain or you're working for a race team. This doesn't really have room for people that aren't at the top of their game. But when we see these sort of efforts, what do you say when you see any kind of pushback? How do you feel about that, and how should we manage that so that it's really just positive going forward? Oh, you're muted.
Sorry, I'm off mute. So I think that when you are faced with that pushback about, are there enough qualified candidates, or are there enough people to fill all the seats? I think if you don't take a broad perspective of diversity and inclusion, diversity, equity, inclusion, you automatically are not employing 50% of the population. And if you limit that by race, you're already dealing with less than 50% of the population. So it just makes logical sense that the wider you cast your net, the more qualified people that you're going to find, the brightest and best minds you want working for your organization, whether it's a racing team or whether it's a speedway or whether it's a professional organization. You want the brightest and best, because that's going to be your competitive advantage. So I think it's contrary to the national narrative to be pushing back on diversity, equity, inclusion. You can find the qualified candidates. I mean, there are scientific studies done, and I wish I had one to quote out there, but there were studies done by Harvard, Ivy League school, in scientific groups. And in scientific groups, when they're trying to prove a hypothesis true or not true, if they were all the same race and gender, they had less, they were cited less in scholarly journals going forward. When they had a more diverse population that was involved in their scientific group, their article got cited more. And the more sites you have, I mean, the more people are looking at it, the more people are looking at your research. So these scientists produced better research because they had a diverse board, they had diverse perspectives. And I know that's been true at the board level too. It's true. And people need to embrace it and say, hey, we're looking for the brightest and best minds. I don't care what sex, don't care what color, don't care yellow, green, blue, orange, whoever they are. You want the brightest and people working for your organization. And that's my viewpoint.
I think you could say that certainly race teams, we know that, I mean, that's the driver of all of this is racing and race teams, race cars. And it's always getting to be the fastest, the best, and all of that is wanting to have, new perspective, because if we're always doing things the way they were, I mean, racers as a culture, all of us we're all racers, right? Anybody that's in this business is still a racer at heart, because we all have the same personality type, which draws us to it. And it's that quest for perfection, pushing ourselves, let alone pushing, as part of a team. But yeah, the wide perspective, the idea of, oh, we've always done it this way is nothing that a racer really ever says, because they're always just trying to find the newest and the best. So to that point, I think that's the one thing that I want to make sure that we're always careful of all of these efforts of now being more visible and making sure that we're deliberate in being visible. But the idea is that we're trying to reach younger people so that we're getting them on the path so that they are viable candidates. It's not about just wanting to make sure that we're hiring anybody for the sake of it. It's making sure that we're getting people to the point of where they're qualified for all of these jobs. And I think that's a distinction, that these aren't just hiring people for the sake of hiring people, but the reason for wanting to have this great cross section is exactly that. It's that audience growth and the idea that people need to see themselves, people seeing themselves just to buy a ticket as a fan, or to see themselves and maybe aspire to do this for a living. And so when they're 12 years old and they see Alba when the TV camera pans, that matters and it resonates differently. I want to ask this of each of you. Have you had a mentor that has helped you, a specific mentor that's helped you along the way? And have you mentored others? Julie?
I've had a number of mentors, and it's interesting because, looking back at the time, it didn't occur to me like what was happening or who was my advocates. Looking back now, though, it's so many people. I think about my very first job, not in racing, honestly, coming out of college, a woman by the name of Nancy Johnson, who saw potential in me, hired me at an advertising agency. But I worked on the agriculture business, but she knew I had a love for racing and worked hard to help me just keep pushing forward on that. And if I had a dream, don't give up on it. She was a strong leader, and I learned so much from her in the 2 years that I worked with her. And when the opportunity to move to Watkins Glen came up, she was my biggest cheerleader, and that was 20 plus years ago. We still keep in touch. And I'm so grateful and thankful for those 2 years, not even in the race industry, that really just helped set me up for where I am today. And mentoring people is something that I truly love. I take an active role in that, not only just here within the team that we have, but in the community. Get to be part of a group, WISE, here in Arizona, and have part of the mentorship program that they have, which has been, I get as much, probably more, honestly, out of it than my mentee is Danny Chamberlain, who works at State Farm Stadium in the sports industry, just dynamic, wonderful individual with a ton of potential. And I find myself learning from her in those conversations just as much as I'm sure she says she's learning from me. Right. So to me, it's just incredibly important. And I'm grateful for all the opportunities that I've had along the way.
Yeah. I think it's one thing to have also peer-to-peer mentors, maybe a mentor of someone else who's kind of in a similar role that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, who isn't necessarily, who could be a little bit more subjective because they don't, they're not, in your office every day either. It's invaluable. How about you, Lori? Have you had mentors?
And I was very fortunate when I was at a speedway organization that had a very, very really sponsor advocate that allowed me into positions that no other woman had been in, that took me into meetings where I was a very junior person on the management team, but took me into meetings and say, hey, learn as much as you can, or gave me the visibility to be able to find the next promotion, to find the next place to go. So I had a very, very strong advocate. And I'm very, very thankful to him for really putting me on a projection where I could learn a lot of different things and make a lot of mistakes in an atmosphere where it really was a coaching atmosphere of really a business coach. Try this. If you fumble or if you hit the wall, to have the right reference, let's figure out how to do it. So I had a really, really good mentor, Humpy Wheeler at the Speedway. That was an amazing mentor, an amazing man, and so one of my best friends today. And then I've been very fortunate to have other mentors along the way outside of racing.
Yep.
And some a woman, Kathy Bassana, Bank of America, is a friend of mine, and I've known her all the way through her career, and she's really an amazing person. She's done a lot. She's one of the top 10 bankers in the country, and just having somebody outside of the motorsports industry and this business perspective, just to talk about, to bounce things off, to make sure, just somebody to check in with. And so I'm a big fan of having those mentors coming up. I wish I had more. I probably would have benefited from it if I had more, if I could find some other people that I could could work with into developing my skill set and visibility. And I do strongly believe now that I'm in my career and I'm in a different position, I do feel strongly. I participate, Julie, in the WISE mentoring program, also Sports Business Journal through CSM, through the Game Changers program. They have a mentoring program that I'm actively involved in with actually, Alba, one of your co-mates, Olivia Massimo. She's at Hendrick Motorsports. She's delightful. So trying to give back and help other young women just navigate those things that come up. And so I'm a huge believer in mentorship on the way up. And then I'm a huge believer in once you're up on the way, lifting others up, because that's the only way that's the only what I can do personally to change the DEI is to make sure that I'm helping other people come up.
Exactly. I had a Sports Business Journal mentorship thing as well. It was a great program. I was matched with a young woman from minor league baseball. And so it was actually great because it was different sports, but we could still kind of have that to bond with. And bless her, her name is Belisha Montgomery. She wound up actually eventually leaving minor league baseball, but she helped my team last year in 2021, which was great. I absolutely, stole her to borrow some of her time, which was really great, and got her to be a racing fan, right? Which we always love when we can kind of convert somebody. But I think you're absolutely right. It's the idea of, and I think the key too is for everybody, I would encourage everyone as well to have a mentor, ask somebody to be your mentor. If you don't know how to get a mentor, you can ask somebody to be your mentor. I think it's also good to have a male mentor, a female mentor. They're both helpful for different reasons. Alba, when you were at General Motors, because it's such a dynamic company, did you have a specific sort of a mentorship or training track that you were part of through? Because I certainly like to, many large companies do a very good job about identifying talent and making sure that you kind of have access to some of the broad resources of the company. Did you have that at General Motors?
So you know what, that exists in General Motors, and now they have a more defined programs. But when I started, that was not really that really didn't happen. So I took very informally opportunity to talk to other females that were doing really good at General Motors and talk to them. But now there's a more defined role, and I wish I would have known some of those things when I was there, to make it a little bit more formal. But with that said, I am still in contact with a professor from college that for me has been a mentor. He was the one that helped me make that decision when I was leaving Puerto Rico to come here. Once again, another country, another right. I call it another weather, another language.
To Michigan.
Right? Yeah, moving to Michigan. But he helped me, and I keep in touch with him, and I keep asking the questions to him, and I feel so comfortable going back and forward. Interesting enough, now he asks me questions too, so it has become a peer-to-peer in some way. Also, I have another person here in the leadership that I feel very comfortable at Hendrick Motorsports.
That's great.
To ask questions. But something that Julie and Lori said, to do the job now for others, I think that is so satisfying. And like an example, I believe a lot about getting interns here, interns in other companies, and to help them to figure out, first of all, is racing the right place for you? Because it's better to figure out that in 2 or 3 months in racing than after you have graduated and you have your career here. But to talk to them not only about careers, what else do they want to do, and to keep in touch with them. When you become a mentor for others, this is a commitment. It's a commitment, and I want to see them growing. I want to see them not only professionally, but also personally. And it has been a huge satisfaction for me to see that, and to keep in touch with interns that I had many, many years ago that are succeeding now, and that you receive that call and tell you, hey, this is what I am doing right now. So it's a very satisfying deal, but again, it's about doing the right thing to help the next generation, something that I'm very passionate about to do.
Absolutely. I think if everybody just even helped a little, it would make such a big difference.
Absolutely.
So Alba, one question, that professor, has he ever come to one of your races?
No, no, he has never come to one of the races. Well, I need to work on that.
Yes.
Okay, when I
He
see
needs
him
to
now,
see like the results of his tutelage of so
no,
many
he
years.
follows the
Yeah.
racing, but he
That's
hasn't come
good.
on one. No,
He's
but
got to be there.
it's such a big deal that somebody has followed your career for so long,
Right.
and that they still have an interest to help you and support
Right.
you. So.
The absolute, and obviously I can imagine, I'm sure you're somebody that he points to, right? When he can point to you as an example. And so it's probably, been 100-fold of you're just passing through the halls of that school. So that's wonderful. Now we're talking about, so somebody had asked in the questions here if women have made strides in Europe. They're saying in engineering and even on the wall making strategic calls. The question is, are women in the U.S. getting involved in the race and engineering support aspects of racing? I certainly know the answer to that, but Alba, do you want to speak to that? We know that what women are doing in the U.S. on the technical side.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and I want to tell you a couple of things. The head of our vehicle engineering department here is a female. Not too many people know about that. Many of the great designers, people that other ladies that are working on software engineering and so on. But we have other examples of other teams. You can see that, and the Indy 500, the winner for this year, the engineer and the strategist was a female, and she has done an amazing job. And there's other females on other teams that have call strategy and help the teams also. So maybe people don't see that too much, but they are making the strides here in the United States.
Absolutely. I think racing in general, we can do better with the storytelling, because I think, when we see, we all know that the Drive to Survive effect, this great documentary series about Formula One, and part of why it is appealing, of course, is because it's showing more than the driver and showing all the personalities and characters involved in getting the car on the grid. You could probably make a reality show about most of our teams, including the people that are running racetracks. But to that point, though, to see that depth of how many people it actually takes, and the fact that there are women kind of everywhere. But yeah, Angela Ashmore, who was the engineer on Marcus Ericsson's car, she and I actually used to work together at Fiat Chrysler on the SRT brand. So it's funny that, usually the women, we kind of all know each other a little bit. I remember years ago meeting with you, Alba, when we were at GM and talking to you early on to get some advice from you. And then it was probably, within a year or so that you had left to go to Hendrick after that. But it's funny how there's so few of us that we tend to, once we meet each other, we tend to kind of know of each other. And hopefully we're now being better about helping each other. I make the comment that for years, it used to be that it would only be, using the proverbial boardroom, that there maybe be one woman on the board of an executive team. And so it was always like the women were fighting the other women for that one seat on the board, instead of, and we were doing it to ourselves, seeing that our competition was each other instead of just the general population. And hopefully what's been happening in the past few years, and will continue, or that those days are behind us. And we realize that we can help each other out, and that we can, whether it is by mentoring or referring people to other jobs and celebrating each other's success, and that actually is better in the long run for all of us, instead of thinking that we are, competing over a very small, jobs pool. We mentioned that we had the summit in Charlotte this year. So we, just a bit of background, we did announce it on ePart Trade in April. So Lynn St. James and I in 2021, we've been kind of talking about it for a while, but kind of put our heads together and said, okay, let's try to make a community for all the women in racing, that we can, all the women in professional racing, all disciplines, all roles, and just really kind of formalize a network so that we can have these resources, whether it be job listings, educational programs, mentors, and sharing best practices and building this network, kind of formalizing a network so that we can all know where we can reach out when we need to. So we created Women in Motorsports North America, which the website is womeninmotorsportsna.com. We had our first summit was in Nashville last year. It was smaller than we had just in Charlotte this year, October 5th and 6th. And next year, November 7th and 8th in Phoenix, open to anybody. And we also had men in the audience too, that we want to make sure that we're not minimizing that we need our male allies who have been there all along and have been advocates in our own careers and consistently value why inclusion is important. But Can each of you talk about sort of your takeaway quickly of what you thought of this year's summit and what we think we should put together for next year's summit, and maybe for those in the audience that are would like to join us, what the value for them may be. Julie?
Unfortunately, I wasn't able to attend the summit this year.
I thought you were on day one. I was only on day two.
I was trying to get there. It was in the middle of some of the Chicago announcements. But I kept in touch with Lynn and Cindy, and it sounded like it was, and we actually had somebody from Phoenix Raceway attend on my behalf, and she came back just couldn't say enough amazing things about just being in the room, honestly. And I think, Beth, you talked about it earlier, just telling these stories and awareness about the women that are in the sport. There's a lot of really great stories and a lot of tremendous experience. We have a few obviously here on this panel today, but there's just so many amazing stories. And that's the thing that I've enjoyed most the last several years, especially, is just getting to know more people, hearing how everyone got to where they are. We all do share that passion, but the path to get here is so unique and so different. But at the end of the day, I feel like it is so relatable because we all have kind of, weaved our way through this sport in different ways. And so I'm looking forward to attending next year's summit in Phoenix. We're excited that we have the opportunity to host it right after NASCAR Championship weekend. Should be an absolutely tremendous event.
Yeah, hopefully attendance will be strong because people can just tack on a couple extra days after the finale race.
Yes.
Lori, what did you think? It was in your backyard, so it was easy for you.
It was in my backyard and I thought it was fantastic. I thought that there was such great energy in the room. The panelists were amazing. The panel discussions were informative. I thought that it really tapped into the energy of people want to belong. They want to be somewhere where they feel there's other people like them in the room. And I think what it really tapped into in my mind was the similar humanity of women competing in motorsports. To your earlier point, Beth, it's a very competitive sport. We're not here because it's easy, right? We're here because it's hard. If this was easy, everybody would do it. And it's a hard, you work weekends, you work holidays, you're on call, you have to be bigger, faster, not bigger. That's, you have to be faster, you have to be quicker, you have to be stronger, brains over, whatever it is. You're so competitive if you're in this business. And I think it was interesting to be, from my perspective, be in another room with women that are equally competitive, are equally as driven to do what they want to do, but then have a lot of the same issues. Oh, this happened to me. Oh yeah, that happened to me too. Let's try a different way or do something different. Oh yeah, I saw that before. Yeah, I heard that. The similarity of the human experience of being involved in this industry that we love called motorsports. To me, what was so impressed upon me, and I'm glad that we're doing it next year. I'm glad that we're moving it around. I'm really honored to be a part of the Women in Motorsports North America. I think it's a fantastic organization and movement that can actually bring change to our industry. And that's something that's worthwhile to do and to strive for.
Absolutely. Lynn and I are both represent different things for the global FIA Women in Motorsport Commission. And I will say that we're definitely other areas of the world are looking at what we're doing in North America, because it's just nice that we're finally putting some organization to it so that we can kind of, I think a lot of us have had good ideas, but it's nice to kind of, sit in a room together and have progress. And also, and respectfully, it's still evolving, so this is still a new organization. We're open to suggestions. It's really meant to just be a resource. And, we're just hopefully with every passing, month, we're getting better and better, with it and for everybody that's a participant. Alba, what did you think? And who would you recommend should attend next year?
First of all, Beth, it was very, very inspiring. Very inspiring. Same from seeing women that we admire Because it doesn't matter that we're in this business, there are women there that we admire so much. To have the opportunity to see them, to hear them, and to talk to them, that was a big deal for me. To see other people also, I saw young students that want to be in the business, and they took it on themselves to apply, to go to the event, and I saw them talking to everybody in the room, trying to learn more. That for me was like fantastic. And also the leadership. We had the top leadership of every sanctioning body there. And they were very key about, they want to continue supporting us. They want to make sure that we're represented. They were listening ideas that everybody had. And that for me was that's very big, very big. I think that we need to was limited, right? Because the room of how many people could come. So to see more people will be fantastic. To see perhaps it's a passion of mine, always Formula One, to see some of the leadership of Formula One and see some of the items in the car and things like that. But I will tell you, every day that I left there, I was like, wow, I love what I do. Yeah, we all, it's not always perfect at work, and everybody can tell you that there are days that are very rough, but you left that place every day knowing, wow, we have been blessed with the sport that we are in, with what we are doing, and to continue, supporting not only this group, but supporting the sport that we're all involved on. So, hey, can we make it more people, double the people the next year? Okay. But fantastic. I was privileged to be involved in some of putting together the event with Cindy and making sure, to visit some of the places. I think that being in Phoenix, we can get an opportunity to visit some other places and to learn more about the industry. So I am excited, and I want to start to work on the next year event. So.
Absolutely. People are going to travel from all over. For the North Carolina event, only 67% were from North Carolina. So we had some people traveling in from all over North America. The venue in Phoenix is larger, though, too, than what we had in Charlotte. So although we were about 320 people, let's say, in Charlotte, our venue in Phoenix, thank you, Julie, can hold 1,500. So hopefully we'll grow there. Now, I think the thing that I just want to make sure that we kind of end on is, we know that there's I presume it's the same for you. We're all sort of in the same boat here with a labor shortage. It's tough. The labor market is tight. So when we talk about diversity and inclusion as good business, and we say that, as we said earlier, it's because of the broad perspectives. We know that even of Fortune 500 companies, when you look at the diversity within the boardrooms that have diversity are usually those companies are more successful for the reasons that we even stated earlier. So because we're faced with a labor shortage, I know that we have that in many paddocks, many racetracks right now. We know that the idea of casting this wider net is probably something that all of us are, and every company hopefully out there is now more keen to do, instead of just, maybe going with, a friend of a friend. We can actually put some job postings out there. But I'm reminded, when we started, we talked about what we studied, agriculture, or, if we're talking about theater or broadcasting and film, I mean, these are things that are not on paper that look like a specific candidate. So I always am fond of saying, take a chance on somebody that doesn't look like you. And I think each of us is an example of maybe somebody that might have been a non-traditional candidate who walked in the door. And then here we are looking back, all of us with a long, consistent career of excellence and success and hard work and promotion, being part of winning teams, executing things at the highest level. So to make it distillable for everybody that's watching for their own company at home, what's one thing that they could do maybe to be more inclusive as they look to hire? Lori, what do you think?
I think that to be more inclusive, number one, cast a wide net be willing to take a chance on somebody that doesn't look like the person sitting next to you, the person across the office from you. And I think that in hiring folks, in my own practice, I would rather have somebody that has fire in the belly. Yeah, you need special skills to be a lawyer. You need that. But I would rather have somebody that has fire in the belly and passion for what they're doing and is a problem solver and can learn things. I can teach them whatever else they need to know. Julie, when I was in your position running operations at Charlotte Motor Speedway, I was like, I need somebody that can problem solve, that is resourceful. I'll teach them how to sell a ticket. I'll teach them how to I'll teach them how to do everything else. And so I think if we're looking for the ability to take a chance on somebody, but also if you take a chance on somebody, be willing to mentor that person. There may be some things with that person that you have to train on that you wouldn't otherwise have to train on. Things about office culture, or things about your particular office culture, or those kinds of things. So take a chance on somebody, look for somebody with passion in the belly, and help that person acclimate to the new, to the culture. And I think they could be more successful retaining those employees. McKinsey did a study. On employee retention. And we all have that problem, right?
Right.
Hard to hire people across the board.
Right.
It's hard to hire people. People that feel included are 2 times more likely to stay with their employer. If they don't feel included, they're 3 times likely to leave.
Wow.
People want to be included.
Right.
Invite somebody to lunch, to coffee, they want to be included.
Right. Make sure that they know that they're invited to the meeting. Don't assume that they know
Yes.
they're invited to the meeting. Make sure that they know. And,
Right.
and having somebody feel included doesn't really cost much, right? But the cost of losing employee costs, so, obviously hits our bottom line so much. So that's a critical miss if somebody's not aware of that. Alba, what do you think is one thing somebody can do as an employer to be inclusive?
Yeah, I would say it's to be open-minded. And I remember that on everything that I do. One thing that I believe, a couple of things. Diversity of thought is very important. And one of you said that earlier in the conversation. Diversity of thought. If you have everybody thinking the same, you're not going to go ahead. Different people, different cultures, it helps you. For me, the cultural fit is important. When I mean cultural fit, I mean in this business to have the passion, to have the attitude, to be inventive, to be curious, and to do whatever it takes to do, to advance the team. So, I used to, in the past, let's be honest, focus on the engineering degree. They were mechanical, so on. But now, several years ago, I have been more open. It's about finding something in that resume and calling people. The resume can tell you one thing, but after you sit down with the person and see what's going on and understand the passion, that is where you really figure out if this person is a right fit or not. Let me tell you one thing. To hire the right person is way more important than many other things that you do. If you hire the right candidate, if you are intentional about hiring the right candidate, if you spend the time doing that, at the end, it will work out for you, like Lori said. So recruiting cannot be only the HR department. We all have to be involved on the recruiting of the right candidate. So involve all your people, not only HR, involve everybody in the company, listen, and be open to any background, because like you said, look at the backgrounds here and look at how successful, the 3 of you are. So it's just being open-minded. That for me is the key, but be very intentional and spend the time. Recruiting is very serious business.
I think that's a really great way to frame it, to remind everybody in the audience that when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, it's about diversity of thought. It's that you're growing your ability as a business, whatever that business is, whether you're a parts supplier, whether you're a race team, whether you're a racetrack. The idea that you have different perspectives around the table is going to make your business better. And so that's really what you're hiring, is you're hiring a different perspective. And that actually is going to help you out. Julie, what do you think when you're you're probably hiring a lot of people, in the middle of hiring a lot of people for the Chicago road race. What is the date of the Chicago road race?
July 1st and 2nd.
Okay. And is that maybe Mid-Ohio weekend? I will try to be at both. I can maybe drive from Mid-Ohio to Chicago. What, when you look at candidates, what would you think, or would you recommend to other people hiring? What's one thing that they can do to improve their inclusion?
you know, a lot of what Lori and Elba said are things that came to mind immediately for me. You know, the things that I am like, finding someone that has those intangibles, passion, like you can, to Lori's point, you can teach a lot of things to people. You can't teach work ethic, and like that passion, and finding those people. But for me, specifically in Phoenix, like don't wait for everyone to come to you. I'm very I'm a promoter, so we're out in the market and telling the story, and whether we have an opening at that moment or not, just making sure that everyone understands what's important to us. What is it that we do every day? How can you be involved? And I spend a lot of time at some of the local colleges and universities, just talking to classes and helping them understand what it is that we do. We're in a market with football and basketball and baseball and you know, spring training and everything else, and all these opportunities to get involved in sports, and NASCAR isn't something that always comes to mind. But you know, going out and meeting them and telling the story, that has led to, honestly, a number of hirings here in Phoenix, a very diverse market, that has only strengthened our team. And so not being afraid to be a little bit proactive as well.
So with Chicago, with it being a street race, and again, you're starting from scratch effectively. So where are you, I assume, hiring people that are local, because there's so much work that has to be done physically there. So probably not a lot of people with racing backgrounds. So you're having to hire people that are event people, I guess, right? So what's that process been like?
We really are, and it's a great question, and I think right now, just the Chicago market has been incredibly welcoming, and the amount of connections that I've had made for me already, just opening doors, people that are interested, they're intrigued. This is something new that they want to be a part of. Somebody, you know, people that I've met, so many people that have been fans of racing in some way, shape, or form, that are like, tell me more, how do we get involved? And whether it's a full-time position or just, you know, again, opening doors, making connections, participating from a philanthropic perspective, that's been really, really fun to see. And I think it's leading us down so many new roads that honestly, I wasn't quite sure where we were going to go or how it was going to come together. There's just so many things that are being presented that I need to hire more people now to help us, but it's fantastic. And I think it is, you know, giving a little bit of an education about what we do. But the fact that we're doing something that hasn't been done before is intriguing, and that's allowing us to tell our story and bring new people in. And I assume it's obviously a multi-year contract, because it would have to be. So I just can't even imagine that, you know, the undertaking, it's a lot of little details, but, I mean, I would imagine that you have people within your network that are kind of helping, that have done street races before, or you just kind of jumping in the deep end. No, well, I'm jumping in the deep end. This is my first street race, but definitely have a tremendous amount of knowledge around me from our internal design and development team that has extensive experience just building and putting things together, but also leaning on experts that have put on street races, best practices, key learnings. I am like as many conversations and as many people as I can surround myself with, that to make sure that we put on the absolute best event possible for the city of Chicago and for NASCAR, our industry as a whole. So it's been a lot of fun, but you're right, it's so much different than a fixed facility, but I've really enjoyed it, and it's going to be a fun several months. Absolutely. We'll be watching for sure. I think it's amazing. I think it's a testament that all of us are in places that we probably wouldn't have necessarily dreamed for ourselves. And that is probably no accident. I think, again, it's personality type that gets us to places, but it's being open to opportunity. I want to thank all of you for being here today and sharing your own ideas and your own stories. And hopefully it was helpful for people at home or in their offices. I still assume everybody's working remotely from home, but no, people are actually in buildings now, like the good old days.
But thank you so much. What
Thank
a
you.
fascinating session. And if you judge by the activity on the chat, I think you guys nailed it. So please stay with us a few more seconds, Julie, Alba, and Laurie. We're going to move you back to attendees. That way you can come back anytime you want to watch other sessions. It was a privilege to have you. We're thanking you so much. And Beth, this is the first session on Women in Motorsport. We have another one coming with Lynn, and we're going to be focusing on the driver's side, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about
Absolutely.
that?
Yeah. Lynn has gathered a few drivers to talk about their journey, the current state of driving, where drivers, what they have in the future, different series that are emerging, and kind of what has been, what skills a driver needs sometimes outside of the cockpit to be successful.
Yes, and that's going to be a very, very good one. So Beth, thank you so much. And what a great sessions. Was fascinating. And I know Judy attended the event in North Carolina. You had a blast there, Judy, right?
Yeah, sure did. And Beth, you put together a great panel, because I know I've heard of Julie through Ken Clapp. He thinks the world of her. Alba saw her at your event, but John Bigford at Hendrick adores her. So what a panel.
Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity.
Registering on ePartrade is easy. To start, click on the Join for Free button on the homepage. First, search your company to see if it's already in our database. If you see your company on the list, click on it to select it. Then, choose Claim Company if you are one of the decision makers, an owner, marketing person, or main company contact. Or choose Join Company if you are an employee, and press Continue. If you couldn't find your company in our database, select Register a New Company. On the following page, fill out your name, email, phone number, job title, and choose a secure password. If you chose Register a New Company, you'll need to choose your business type. Select Supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose Racing Business if you're looking to source new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose Race Team if you own or are a member of a professional race team. Then, enter your company name. Please provide a website, Facebook page, or LinkedIn if you have one, and choose to either claim or join the company. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Finally, click Register Now and your registration will be submitted for approval. An email will be sent to your inbox. Please confirm your email address and you will be approved shortly. Welcome to ePartrade.